Welcome here to episode 1, technically the second episode. We like to confuse people around here. But yes, episode 1 of the Chosen Companion series. My name is Mike from Showboys Podcast. Joined with me is my good friend and now I can say fellow podcaster because this is your second. I held up one finger, but said second, your second episode with us at least. So yeah, I believe you are now a qualified podcaster. But
Yes,
anyways,
sir.
my friend James, how are you doing, man?
Great, man. How are you? It's a good Monday.
Yes, I'm a little warm, but we can talk about that in a minute. But yeah, James is from the nerdybible.com. Make sure you go check that out. We were just talking right before we started. He has a ridiculously cool banner on his website now that has like twinkling stars, and it's very fun to look at. So go look at it and then read all of his stuff and then listen to the podcast episodes over there.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, so today's Monday, and it was an eventful day. We my wife came downstairs this morning to get some chicken out of the freezer down here in the basement. Noticed a nice puddle under our furnace, so that's not good. And she's like, hey, check this out, we got a cool puddle over here under this furnace. And I'm like, that's pretty rad, awesome. Came back, went back to work. She went and took our second grader to school, came home, and I took a break from work, went and got in the shower because I had a chiropractor appointment or whatever. Decided not to be stinky for that. Anyways, I'm in the shower. She comes in. She's like, so our house reeks of gas. What do we do? And I was like, well, I'm in the shower, so I can't really do much, but I would say probably go outside and call the fire department. So that's what she did. The fire department came, checked it out. Nothing. They couldn't detect anything. They didn't pick anything dangerous up. So we were kind of baffled. The smell kind of went away. Make a long story short, turns out you should change the air filters in your furnace somewhat more regularly than every 4 years, because ours was so like packed full of whatever nasty stuff they filter out, that it made a part in our furnace freeze because there was no airflow, and then basically it fried the circuit board and the blower motor. So the smell we were smelling was those parts frying. So it's really hot in my house right now.
Was it the fire department that pointed that out, or
no? We had a heating and cooling guy come because we had shut off the air conditioner when we first smelled the smell, and then a little while after the fire department left, we turned the air back on because it was starting to get a little toasty because it was a little warm today. And after about half hour, the smell came back and it was coming through the vents. So we were like, all right, we know that it's not like anything dangerous, but it smells terrible. So we're just going to shut the air off. And we called the heating and cooling guy, and he basically was very disappointed in us.
Oh boy, or he wasn't mad, just disappointed.
Yeah, no, I think he was both. I think he was both. So for some reason, I'm still wearing a hoodie, but I am very sweaty.
That's fun.
Yeah. So how's your day?
It was good. Better Monday than some of the last ones, but it was good. Started my first day of seminary today.
Very cool.
Much different than my 6 years of physics, which is like, hey, here's all these problems that you're going to solve, and math and that type of thing. Now it's like, here's the 15 papers that you're going to write this semester, and the amount of books, and you're just going to read all these. And so
nice.
And so it was a lot. It's fun though. I'm looking forward to it. It's a whole different animal, but I like writing. I'm just not. My wife would probably say I'm not the best at it. Nicely. No, nice. She's very supportive, but yeah, so I think it's going to hone my writing skills. So I'm pretty excited about it.
That's
Yeah.
cool. I'm excited for you. I know you're looking forward to starting that. So
Mhm.
that's awesome that the time has finally come.
Yeah.
Um, with that being said, the time has finally come for us to break down the first episode of The Chosen, season 1. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the entire episode here. Just like we do on the Showboys companion series, the many companion series that we've done, kind of like we talked about last week, we're going to break down and kind of recap each episode of The Chosen, talk about, how they relate to actual scripture, talk about the characters, talk about the impact these episodes have, had on us when we watched it, all that sorts of stuff. So let's get right into it. I'll read the episode summary here, and then we'll just go through, story arc by story arc and break it down. So, first episode here is called I Have Called You by Name, of course, directed by Dallas Jenkins, and this released on April 21st, 2019. So, 3 years ago. In Capernaum, 26 AD, Mary Magdalene, going by the name Lilith, wrestles with real demons. While the Pharisee Nicodemus is touring the region, Praetor Quintus approaches him, demanding help in collecting unpaid taxes. The tax collector Matthew deals with the turmoil of being considered a traitor by his fellow Jews. The fisherman Simon and his brother Andrew struggle with their tax debts to Rome. At a centurion's behest, Nicodemus goes to the Red Quarter to perform an exorcism on Lilith, but fails, leaving him shaken. On tax day, Andrew is unable to pay, but Simon tells Matthew that he has an arrangement with Quintus. The arrangement is to inform Quintus about his fellow Jews fishing on Shabbat, but Andrew disapproves, considering it a betrayal. Lilith loses hope for her condition until she encounters Jesus, who calls Mary Magdalene by name, healing and restoring her. So this episode has quite a bit going on. I would say it's pretty much double the length of the pilot. So we will have much more to work with here, which I'm excited about. First off, we'll just go. Usually, what we do is we'll just give like a general opinion about the episode itself before we really roll our sleeves up and get into the details here. So, if you can remember all the way back to the first time you saw this episode, I mean, I would love your opinion of your rewatch, obviously, too. But if you can remember that initial watch, like what were your thoughts after viewing this?
I would say the end, I would have to jump there, but the end is a pretty big one for me. So leading up to that, I'll go retro, respectively. Um, there's a lot of like character building in it. So you're, learning a lot. Like it's basically the episode is centered around Simon Peter. And then you got Matthew, and then Mary Magdalene. I think those are I would say the main characters in that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of just character building. You're trying to understand who these characters are. And I think especially coming from somebody that may have read the Bible, you get a sense of these characters from reading the Bible and just being, of what they're like and that type of thing. So when you start to see them playing out on the screen, it makes you think a little bit, but I would say it was a little slow at times, but not bad. Like I said, though, the end is what gets it. It makes it, that whole like 40 some minutes just make complete sense. Not that it didn't make sense,
right?
But it just hits it home.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the character building that we see in this episode and that we'll see throughout the series itself is very interesting because anyone who's read the Bible at all will notice it's not very detailed in most places. So the information Dallas has going into the series on all of the characters that he will use from the Bible, pretty limited, I would venture to say. So there's a lot of inferring, maybe looking at other historical pieces to kind of like put together the puzzle of each character that is shown in the series. And I wish I would have screen grabbed this or wrote it down. The text that happens in the very start of the episode. I'll find it while you're talking, but it basically is like, yeah, the series is based off of stories from the scripture, but there are a lot of inferences going on, and you should definitely read the gospel. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but I'll look it up word for word because it's pretty good. But yeah, I would definitely agree with you. Simon, Mary, and Matthew are the big focuses here. I would also venture or argue to say that Nicodemus is a pretty big point in this episode too. I love his character throughout the series. He's played by Eric Avari. He does a great job. And honestly, I would agree with you. My first watch, the end just gets me. It even got me here tonight. I watched it like right before I got on the computer to record this episode. And I looked over at my wife. We watched it again together. It got her again. Like, it's just, the end is so good. But one thing from like a cinematic standpoint, you could just tell. Again, we kind of touched on it in the pilot, but it wasn't as evident in the pilot because I think they're working with a smaller budget and things of that nature. But the quality, some of the shots you're getting, the cinematography is really good. The acting is, I think, leagues above any other sort of Christian content that it has existed probably ever.
It's just infinite amount of
because I believe Eric Avari is like a legit actor. He's the guy who plays Nicodemus. I'm gonna look this up real quick.
Yeah, he's one of those where I don't know if it's just because I've seen the show a few times now, where it's like he looks so familiar, and I haven't looked him up.
Oh, he's been in. Okay, he is his known for section on IMDb. He's Mr. Deeds, or he's Cecil Anderson in Mr. Deeds, Adam Sandler movie. He is Dr. Terrence Bay in The Mummy. He's in Planet of the Apes. He's like a legit like actor. He's been in quite a few blockbuster movies here. So it's cool that they're able to get like a legit like high caliber actor to play a character in this series. But he isn't the only one that impresses. I really enjoy the actor who plays Simon, who is Shahar Isaac. I think he's great. The actress who plays as Mary Magdalene, I think she does a fantastic job throughout the series. That is Elizabeth Tabish. Paris Patel plays Matthew. He does a fantastic job. I honestly am a huge fan of Andrew in the series. I think his character is like good comedy relief. He's just like so pure hearted. I love Andrew so much. He's played by Noah James, but just across the board, the acting in this series, like you said, head and shoulders above every piece of Christian content we've had to date, I would say. And you get a taste of that right off the bat here in episode 1, which is awesome.
Do you think you like Andrew so well because of his dynamic with Peter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's just that they balance each other well, and it's like
that brotherly relationship is so good. Every time they're on the screen together, it's great. It's fantastic. While I got the keyboard fired up, I'm gonna look up that text in the very first.
Oh, I got it right here.
You do?
So
Perfect.
So it says The Chosen is based on the true stories of the Gospels of Jesus Christ. Some locations and timelines have been combined or condensed. Backstories and some characters or dialogue have been added. However, all biblical and historical contexts and any artistic imagination are designed to support the truth and intention of the scriptures. Viewers are encouraged to read the Gospels. The original names, locations, and phrases have been transliterated into English for anything spoken. So that's its little disclaimer.
Yeah, and I like how they put that out front,
Mhm.
like right off the bat, just to be like, look, like we're doing our best we're trying to support and like tell you what we get out of the scripture, out of the gospels.
Yeah.
Like what we're doing, like do not take this as the gospel. Like go read the gospels.
Yeah. And it does we were kind of briefly discussed about it before we started the podcast, but I feel like these characters are built retrospectively from like the gospels, these people that have read the gospel so much and they understand this, and maybe Acts, giving them context, they know this history, and then they take it back and build these characters. So it's like, if you understand them biblically, you're going to see these patterns within them of the way that those characters are.
Yeah, and I think another thing that you have to take into context when watching this, because like we said in episode 0, obviously anything centered around the Bible, around Jesus, around God, is going to be heavily scrutinized, right? And really like looked at under the microscope from believers and non-believers alike.
I think I hear a bad comment being typed about us right now.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah, I just felt an unsubscribe. Oh, yeah. But you got to take into mind, like, this is not a documentary, right? This is a work of fiction based on
art.
Yeah, it's so like my favorite term of this companion series will be creative liberties. So you have to keep in mind, like, they're creating a show, a drama about the Gospels of Jesus. Not that there wasn't drama in the Gospels, but like if you're going to make a series and have characters people are going to care about and make them relatable, you're going to have to give them a backstory and things that they have to, go through and things like that. So, anyways, I don't know where I was going.
I like what you said there, though, that it's fiction, and it's not saying that the Gospels are fiction. It's saying that the stories here are fabricated from the idea of truth. Like, I mean, you have this all the time in literature, like, you don't have to be reading nonfiction to get truth. There's truth in fiction, like that's very similar to, if you look back at Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. It's a book, but it's a philosophical book. So I don't know if I'll keep that in this or not, but a philosophy book, but it's a fictional book about characters. And there's so much truth in it if you really read it and unpack it. Which I have not. It's on my docket. I've heard a lot about it. It's literally the next fiction book that I'm reading. Nice. I've already downloaded it, and I'm super excited about it. But go on.
No, yeah, it's just I think that's what they're saying here with this disclaimer. Yeah. I think it's something that maybe I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this show probably upsets a lot of Christians due to the creative liberties they have with, like, the disciples, right? And maybe some things Jesus does in the series or how he's portrayed. But like, read the disclaimer. Like, this is a fictional retelling, and it tries to be, I think, as accurate as it can be while being presented as a drama, a dramatization of the Gospels. And like you said, like there is oftentimes truth you can find in works of art, and I believe that that's why art is used and created in the first place to deliver a message, right? But I just thought that was an important thing to get out of the way right at the start, because there are some controversial things. For instance, how Matthew is portrayed. I would levy to say that probably is an issue for some people.
You said Levi?
Yeah,
Levi.
probably.
This is, never mind. Go on.
But yeah, so let's just start right at the top. The opening scene, we get like a flashback. I think it's like year 2 BC, I believe. I forget exactly where, but we're at a home, and we have a father sitting outside by the fire, and his young daughter comes out. She's like, I'm scared, and he comforts her, calms her down, and reminds her of a scripture that they often say in times like this, and it's from the scroll of Isaiah. Correct? Yes.
Correct. Yeah. So it's Isaiah 43:1.
Yes. And what does that say, sir?
Trying to get probably something very similar to the version that
they use in the show.
Yeah, but I'll just read this. It's the New Living Translation. I don't know. But now, O Jacob, listen to the Lord who created you. O Israel, the one who formed you says, do not be afraid, for I have ransomed you. I have called you by name. You are mine.
Yes, very, very good piece of scripture. I think they use in the show redeemed instead of ransomed, which I think is also both words are excellent. But you're gonna want to stick a pin here in this scene, because this plays a big part later on in the episode. But it's kind of funny, honestly, because sorry, I'm clicking my pen like right by the microphone. It's kind of funny though, because whenever when we put the girls to bed, there are a few scriptures that they like to say or whatever, and my oldest would have nightmares every once in a while, like a couple of years ago. Excuse me. And one of the scriptures that, sorry, now the hiccups. It's a great time to be over here and to be my microphone. One of the scriptures she would say is like, I think it's Isaiah 41:13 or something, where it's like, the Lord says to me, do not be afraid, I'm with you, or something like that. I can't remember on the spot now, of course, even though I've literally said it with her for like 3 years every night at bedtime. But it was just like, I don't know, funny to see that on the episode, because it was a father with his young daughter who was afraid of something. She didn't even know what. She was just scared, using a scripture from Isaiah, basically telling her not to be afraid, because the Lord's with you. The Lord has you. You are the Lord's. I don't know. I thought that was like a cool little parallel with my life. But
for I am the Lord your God, who upholds your right hand, who says to you, do not fear, I will help you. Is that it?
Yep.
All right, perfect.
But we say like the kid version, because I don't think she'll remember all that. But yes, that's it. So it's like it's pretty similar to the one this little girl's saying here. But yeah, we go transition from that scene to an older lady waking up in her bed, clearly distraught, sweaty, just like I am right now. I'm so sweaty right now. She wakes up, she has like blood on her hands. She's, not well. And we get a camera shot over, panning across the room, and we see the same like little wooden doll that the little girl had in the opening scene. So we know this is the same person here in present time. But yeah, it appears this lady is not doing well, and she attacks some dude because he's running through the square like blood all over his
She's
face.
got blood on her hands.
Yeah, literally blood on
And but
her
it's
hands.
like in a confused state, like
Yeah.
doesn't understand why, but she hears the dude screaming.
Yeah. And this flashback was a dream she was having, because like as soon as they say that scripture, she like wakes up. But anyways, so that's going on, and we're then introduced to. I want to say this is where we're introduced to Matthew as he's getting ready to go to work. I don't know if we see Nicodemus first or Matthew, but we'll just go with Matthew because it's in my mind right now.
Mhm.
But we're introduced to this character. He's getting ready for something. He's like going through his wardrobe. He's got a lot of nice, clean clothes, which not very common in this area of town that we're in. He has like rows of sandals. It kind of looks like my wife's side of the closet. There's just like tons of shoes. He's getting ready. He comes outside. He's like disgusted with, there's like poop on the floor or like on the ground from like the horses or goats or lambs or whatever that's, going
He's
through the streets.
clearly out of place.
Yeah, he does not feel comfortable. He is disgusted. He steps in a pile, honestly. But he like hires a local to like cart him where he has to go in secret. Like he climbs in the cart, cover it. There's some funny dialogue here. But this character, we learn this is Matthew. He's on his way to his job, which is being a tax collector for the Romans. And he's obviously being escorted there in secret because the Jews do not like the tax collectors because they're collecting taxes for their oppressors and making life very, very difficult for them. So he's trying to avoid conflict in hiding there. But one thing we notice right away off the bat is Matthew is different. He's very particular. He's
That's a good word.
OCD in nature. He's got like a rag in his hand. Like when he goes outside, like he covers his nose and mouth to like, I'm assuming like keep the stench out or maybe any germs or whatever. But like as soon as he steps in the pile of poo, right, he like immediately takes his sandals off. He has a backup pair in his bag and he throws them onto the side of the road, and his escort's like, dude, what do you like, that's a month's salary. Your sandals are like the equivalent of a month's salary for me. You're just gonna throw them to the side. So that just gives you an idea of like Matthew's place in this society versus all the other Jews in this place.
Yeah, and I think that's building the idea of what a tax collector is. Because I was thinking about it. I never really asked the question like, are all tax collectors Jewish? And I think I mean, I don't want to just go ahead and say yes, but I think for the most part they are. And it looked like I was doing some research that they would bid. So the high class Jewish people would bid for these positions and actually and become tax collectors. So it's really never really thought about that before
Yeah,
this.
me neither, actually.
And so it really is this weird position because it's almost like they levy to be this, but they're hated, but
Yeah.
they make a lot of
But they're
money doing it.
They
probably have
compensated
tax
pretty
breaks.
well. Because Matthew very clearly is more well off than the other people here.
Yeah.
And they make comments throughout the episode, other Jews or even like his like Roman handler. I'll just call him that. Which is funny because later on, or maybe it's towards the end of this little segment of Matthew where they're like going to report their collections to the empire or whatever. There's like each tax collector in line is a Jew, and they're accompanied by like a Roman handler.
Yes. And it's because it's almost like I feel like those positions are probably somewhat mocked in like a sarcastic way. Like they're probably not like highly revered. Um, people don't respect
Yeah,
these
there's like
people. And
babysitters.
the Romans are, yeah, the Romans are like, well, we're going to put this centurion with you, and they're
Yeah,
going to watch you to make sure that you're doing your job right, because we don't actually really trust you, but we're
yeah,
going to put you in this level of like, not power, well, kind of power. I mean, power over what's lesser than
yeah,
him, you know.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, Matthew is clearly portrayed as I would even lean to say like autistic, maybe like
On the spectrum,
highly
I think you would,
functioning, maybe Asperger's, like
yeah.
definitely on the spectrum, or very, very highly OCD,
He's
or
just
is
very
there really a difference? Like maybe both, maybe a
He's
little
just
both.
very particular, like you said,
Yes.
just every little nuance to
Mhm.
him is very.
And I think this might, I don't want to say be upsetting, but might be one of those points where people are like, "Where did you get that from?" Like one of my
Oh, yeah.
fancy saying, one of the creative liberties that
Creative
might
liberties.
create some tension with most Christians.
I would agree with that. I don't really get that from scripture. I don't know, and it's almost like I wanna go back and reread Matthew looking for this theme,
Mhm.
like, why did they portray him this way? I don't fully have a grasp of why.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and
I
Matthew obviously is a very important and prominent character, so this will be discussed probably many times throughout the companion series. And I think is at least in the show a reason why. Yeah, we'll talk to it when we get to it. But yeah, I'm very interested to know like what information they came across that supported this, or if this was just one of those creative liberties they took um, to demonstrate a point where, like, because they do this with another one of Jesus's followers in the series, where it's showing like it doesn't matter who you are, like your place in society. It doesn't matter like your righteousness, right? Like you see that with Mary. We'll get to that by the end of the episode. Your holiness, your
Mhm,
purity, your I don't know whether or not you're, if you're listening to the audio version, like air quote normal, or on the spectrum, or XYZ, like Jesus will come, he'll see you where you are for who you are,
mhm,
and it doesn't matter to him. Like you still receive the same love, the same salvation, and can still be used in the same manner as your quote unquote normal person, or you know, insert whatever adjective you want. So I don't know if that's like a thing, a point they were trying to prove, right, by taking this direction with Matthew, or if they have like actual evidence supporting, you know, that's how Matthew was, which I don't know. Maybe there's I haven't dug through the text, so to speak. But
yeah, I mean, I guess maybe the way he starts out, particular about like maybe it's the way he details his account of the gospel. I
mhm,
But then I don't know. I mean, I love reading Luke's perspective just because he's very analytical. I mean, he was a doctor, so it's like the way he presents it is in a more it's more relatable to me and how I think. So I don't know if there's something about the way he writes it. I like, again,
yeah,
I want to reread it just all the way through, looking for this theme. Like, what? or maybe just hear an interview of why. That would be a little bit easier, but
Yeah, or Dallas, yeah. Hey, I know you're listening. You should come on the show and talk to us.
well,
But yeah, so that's how we're introduced to Matthew. We're then introduced to the Pharisee Nicodemus. He's on a little cart ride through the countryside, and he's stopped by the Romans. And we're also introduced to Praetor Quintus here too. But we see Nicodemus. He is what they call him, the teacher of teachers. He is on his way to Capernaum here to do some address, some sort of teaching, be honored in some way. And he stopped by Quintus here because, of course, the Romans looking to collect every ounce of tax they can. He knows who Nicodemus is and knows his influence, and he's like, listen, help us get those taxes. Help us get the tax that we're owed on, I think, like the Shabbat fishing halls or something.
So Shabbat is just another word for like Saturday, their Sabbath. And what they're saying in this is that fishermen would go out on the Sabbath and defy the Jewish law and catch fish.
I guess that'd be a good thing to explain to people who don't know, because that's kind of pretty.
Yeah. So Sabbath, like there's a lot of law rules around Sabbath and what you can do, and it's very particular about what you can do and what you can't do. And like you see throughout, I mean, not just this series, the Gospels in general, of people that are doing things. Even like Jesus comes in and he does things on the Sabbath, and you have Pharisees that are pointing out, what do you mean you're doing this? And so, that's a little side note, but, so basically their fishermen are going out on the Sabbath when they shouldn't be, and they're catching fish, but by doing it in secrecy, they're catching fish. And what don't they have to do? Is pay taxes, because they're not reporting it, because if they reported it, they're getting pointed out by the lawyers. I think last week we talked about, talking about a lot of times they say, woe to you lawyers. The other word that they always use is woe to you Pharisees, so it's like Pharisees are the high ups that are basically, well, there's Pharisees and Sadducees, and it really just goes on to whether they identify with like oral law or like, so it's going a little too deep, but basically they're they're enforcing,
lines up with your website, I guess.
Yeah, they're enforcing the law is essentially what they're doing it. And it's a weird dynamic when you have excuse me, Rome, which in that day was the law. I mean, even what did Quintus say in there? He's like, all
the only official business is
Roman business. Exactly. So, it's this weird dynamic because Rome is oppressing Jews, but it's also like they're letting them keep aspects of their culture as long as it doesn't, it's like giving them just enough to keep them tame.
Right.
But the point here is that they're fishing on Sabbath and not presenting their catching what they catch. So therefore they're not paying taxes, and they're not giving to Caesar what is Caesar's.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to note here too, Quintus knows the influence somebody like Nicodemus has to the Jews, right? And he even goes out and references like, the crazy dude out in the wilderness.
John
the Baptizer.
Your bug-eating friend, I think is what Peter says later.
And he references, other religious leaders. He even says something like, "You're coming Messiah" or whatever. But he's noting all these people that Rome has their eyes on, because they know that these people hold influence to the public, right? To the people that Rome is trying to have control over. So he's kind of, this is also like one of those power moves by Quintus where he's like, I know who you are and what you can do, and like don't think you can just like, kind of like come in here and just do whatever you want. Like we got our eyes on you. By the way, you need to do this for me now. Help us report those taxes.
Which is so weird. The it almost just seems like the perfect fit for like a Roman occupation. Like here's this culture and society that governs themselves by very strict laws, and I don't have to really fully force these people to continue to oppress them. I just manipulate their leaders,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's just
exactly.
it's it's very sophisticated
Yeah.
is what I would analyze and say.
Yeah. So, yes, this is how we meet Nicodemus. We also are introduced to, of course, Simon and Andrew. This is a fun introduction too. It's kind of like a little underground fight club they have going on.
Except it's
Uh,
with Peter's wife's brother.
yeah, it's a weird fight club. I didn't
Uh,
say it didn't say
the
it was
first
the
rule
a
of
fight
Fight
club that
Club
makes
is
the doesn't make the most sense. But we have Simon here trying to like hustle um, who we learned to that is his brother-in-law Jehoshaphat. Basically, everyone's betting on this fight between Simon and Jehoshaphat, and Simon's throwing it, like making it look like he's about to lose. So everyone starts to bet for Jehoshaphat, and then Simon comes back and he is seemingly about to win, and then Jehoshaphat's brother comes in, or is it cousin? I forget. Somebody related to Jehoshaphat comes in and knocks out Simon, and Simon and Andrew lose all their money, and it's sad because the con man got conned. But it was an interesting, fun scene. Again, I like the two actors that play Simon and Peter. I think they do a great job here. We have again Noah James plays Andrew and Shahar Isaac plays Simon. Two very good and captivating characters on screen.
Mhm.
I like every scene these guys are in. But yeah, what do you think about the introduction here with Simon and Andrew?
I think it's so I really first off, I like the dynamic between the two. I really do. It's just a perfect balance of them. But I also think that the way that they portray Peter is just great. Peter is one of my favorite characters in the New Testament. Um, just the way it reminds me of how I can be very quick to like if you really look at the things Peter does throughout the gospels, like he does some very dumb things, but it's not because he's dumb. He's very smart, and you can see that by the way he almost like matures throughout acts, like just
Mhm.
to jump fully ahead, but like he just is so quick to jump onto something that shows that he put zero thought into what he's about to do. And I think that you can see by what he does even in the first episode. I mean, he goes out fishing on Shabbat. And so it's like the way he just does these things. He doesn't really put much thought into them. He's like more of a reacting
Mhm.
person. And so you can see that in just the little things he does, the big things he does. So I love how they're portraying him, like as opposed to how we see Matthew portrayed, which is like confusing to me.
Mhm.
The way that they portray Peter is very I think it's pretty good. And I'm also drawing from future episodes because I can't just like take
Yeah,
that
yeah,
out
yeah.
of my head.
Right.
I know what he's like and the
Now
way he
for
reacts to things.
for anyone who isn't like completely current with the Chosen, maybe watching along with us episode by episode, or have not seen any of the Chosen, uh, he is called Simon at this point of the show, but we know this later becomes Peter, Simon
Oh,
Peter.
sorry.
So,
Yeah, that
um,
was
so whenever one of us, slips up and says Peter, we're talking about Simon.
mm.
It
I
Gotta
think
love
I've
the
just
Bible. They
only
do that
slipped
all the
up.
time. They're always changing names. Um,
Well, a lot of it's too with translations from Greek and
mhm,
Hebrew, and so
yeah.
it's like I think a lot of people get that wrong with like for instance Paul and Saul. Like I think there's been a lot of like sermons you hear and they're like, "Oh, and they renamed him." And it's like I don't think that's how it was. I think it's just a translate, but go on.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so Simon and Andrew, we learn they're not exactly in the best financial state here, and that Simon's trying to play a little con, get a little scratch here. They're fishermen by trade, um, brothers, of course, and we again learn a few minutes after this fight scene that. I think we actually learned during the fight scene, during the banter between Simon and Jehoshaphat, that Simon is in fact married to Jehoshaphat's sister.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, later on in the episode, tax day comes, and Simon and Andrew are, you know, stressing honestly about how they're going to pay their taxes because they're not doing so great in the fishing business lately. We learn that there are some merchants doing some like big brain fishing moves on. I think it's on the Shabbat. They are basically stringing a ton of I think he said 6 nets together
Mm.
and like trolling the fishing area. Basically hauling in these huge catches, and then when Simon goes out, like he can't catch anything because they're all taken. So they're kind of they're the brick and mortar to the big box store fishermen, right? Like Simon and Peter are your local coffee shop, and these merchants are the Starbucks swooping in and taking all the business.
I picture Goofy out in the boat and
Yes,
the gone fishing,
yes, yes, yes.
trying to catch a fish.
But they're like stressing out, right? So they don't know how they're going to pay their taxes. Like Andrew's talking about how right before Simon goes out on the Shabbat to do his illegal fishing, they're like they're going to take the boat. Like we're going to lose the boat. I'm going to lose my house. Like I can't pay. When they get to the tax booth, right, and Matthew's going through their account, like what did they say? Andrew's like 6 weeks late or something.
Yep.
Like not in a good position at all. And here, we're kind of jumping ahead. I think what might be the best is follow each character through the episode,
Yep.
since there's going to be a lot of jumping around. So we'll just finish out Simon and Andrews here. So Simon behind Andrew's back hatched a plan, right, to pay their debts with the Romans. When he discovered this merchant boat, like with their huge haul on the Shabbat, he basically kind of like reported it to the Romans because when he, docked his boat, he was about to be arrested by the Romans, who caught him out there. And he's like, "Wait, don't arrest me. I can give you somebody even better to arrest or tax." So he basically makes a deal like, I'll turn these fishermen into you, and you call our debt even for my brother and I. And they agree. Simon tells Andrew. Andrew's not happy. Andrew, he's a little sweetheart, always putting everyone above himself. And he's like, dude, we can't do that. Like, we're betraying our own people. Like, who cares if they're merchants, right? And kind of who cares if they're kind of screwing us over, honestly, by this big brain fishing tactic they have going on. We can't turn we can't turn in fellow Jews to the Romans. Like that's just not cool. And Simon, he's annoyed because he's trying to do what's best for him and his family. And Andrew, so that's kind of like where we leave off there. There's kind of a little rift between Simon and Andrew. But yeah, man. You're a fan of the portrayal of Simon. What do you think about Andrew?
I think I don't know. I don't know enough about the actual biblical account of him. I don't even know. I'm not recalling much about it. But I think he's good. I think, like I said, my mind goes to Peter or Simon. Sorry. My mind goes to Simon because I feel like I understand him more. So just the balance there is just, I think it's
Yeah.
perfect. So I don't know if that's a creative liberty or not. Again, that would be another thing I have to look. I don't know if there's that much about him to even interpret his character in
Yeah.
in the actual gospels.
Yeah. That's a very good point. What else we got here? So that wraps up Simon and Andrew. We've pretty much wrapped up Matthew. I mean, at this point, they didn't really do much with Matthew other than introduce him and point out that he is a very not liked Jewish tax collector.
Mhm.
um, so that leaves Nicodemus and Mary Magdalene. So um, Nicodemus goes, I think this happens while he's visiting a synagogue. A Roman centurion comes in. He's like, "Hey, we got this crazy lady over in the red quarter. Um, you should go take a look." And Nicodemus is not wanting to do this. I forget what the exact reason. Do you remember?
Well, I think the area of town is implied. I think it implies like prostitution
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just uncleanness. So I think
yes.
he's just like, no, we don't,
Not
we
somewhere
holy
a
people
person of
don't,
his stature
yeah,
would
we will
be
not
found.
be, we don't go to that area. I mean,
Yeah.
even him walk as they cut to the scene of him, spoiler alert, actually walking to there, he's just like disgusted and kind of just not even out of place, but just like,
It's like an alien. Like,
yeah, like he
because
does
even
not.
everyone is, like, looking at him like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
Like
yeah, even the but yeah, I like how they're just like, "Yeah, you it's not an option. You're going there."
yeah, yeah, let
What
me
did he
rephrase that.
he's like, "This is the teacher of teachers," and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna take my fire of fires
Yeah,
and
oh my
burn
god.
down your," so it was
Yeah,
not
nice
a
synagogue you have here. It'd be a shame if it were to
yeah,
catch
my
on fire.
uh-huh.
That I
So
love that line though, like, "My fire of fires."
yeah, so yeah, no, I don't remember what the original question was.
Oh, like why he didn't, want
Oh,
to
yeah, yeah,
go to the red
that's
quarter, but yeah,
yeah.
yeah, a man of his stature, and position, um, would never be caught, alive or dead in the red quarter.
Mhm.
But the centurion did not take no for an answer, and Nicodemus had to go check it out. So he goes, and we kind of get like the closest thing to Christian horror that you will get on screen, and honestly, not bad. I mean, it's pretty like spooky-ish intense as Nicodemus goes down into Mary's room.
It's very
Um,
exorcisty.
yes, yes. Like the room's all out of sorts, like the bed's flipped over, like it's basically just torn apart. It's like a tornado went through the room. And Nicodemus is uh like really not wanting to go down there. Like just the look on his face, he looks worried and honestly scared a little bit. Apprehensive, maybe a better word there. But he has his exorcism gear. He's got the incense and the materials. He had one of his little minions go grab for him. And he goes down and he's declaring the scriptures over this room, over this possessed woman. Because even before he goes down into the room, you can hear her as he's making his way to
Mhm.
the room, the building or whatever. You can hear her screaming, and the locals there are like, "Oh, it's classic Mary being Mary. Just
Give her some
give her a few
time, she'll work
minutes.
it out, and
She'll be okay."
uh-huh.
Um, but after enough screams and things like the lady that's having this conversation with Nicodemus is like, all right, you can get rid of this, you can cure this, have at it. So Nicodemus makes his way down into the room. He's basically trying to perform an exorcism, and Mary just like lurks up over the footboard of the bed, and it
I
well,
can't
it
remember what.
wasn't Mary, but yes, she basically is like, bro, this is, you might as well leave. This is not working.
Yeah.
But it's great because like it actually is like, in context to Christian media, this is pretty spooky. Like they have a cool effect on her voice where it's like her voice, but then they like have a couple octaves much lower, so you get that like
Well,
a
it
classic.
wasn't that dramatized, but it was
Yeah,
enough. It was
there's stuff in there.
if
But yeah, no, it was good. It was effective. It was a
yeah,
nice
it was.
attempt. But yeah, basically Nicodemus already being a little shook having to go down here is
I
definitely shook to his core during this confrontation, because basically what he's known, like his whole Pharisee life didn't work, right? And this sends him kind of into a spiral, questioning like what he's believed in this whole time.
Yeah, and I like how they portrayed it. They didn't almost they didn't focus on like her being possessed. Like it wasn't like literally The Exorcist where it's like, the head's turning and this
Yeah, I got
like
pieces everywhere.
yeah, it really did show like a level of mental illness that was in her.
Mhm.
They I think they did a good job of I don't know, I don't want to say humanizing, but yeah, I think a level of
Portraying it in a more realistic
yeah,
way.
in a more modern perspective of it, rather than I feel like of a
She's
more
not like crawling around on the ceiling, like
yeah, and yeah, exactly. And so it's like this mental, not to say that like, taking lightly the idea of a spiritual, the ideas, but it's like a mental illness. You can see it in her, the way she's reacting.
Mhm,
It wasn't like this voice that came out like speaking from a outside perspective, or like a third party. I don't know. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like what you're saying. And you can see that her episode is triggered by things, before this interaction. Uh, she's already starting to go into an episode, and then she like looks out of her door and she sees a guard harassing a woman out there, and then you get a flashback of a not so pleasant scene of a guard and an interaction that they had with Mary, uh, again sending her further down the spiral. But yeah, I think they do a good job of portraying a possession in somewhat realistic, grounded terms, because this is a whole other topic that could be, we could spend hours on. Um,
Mhm.
but like, I think possession is a real thing. You're not going to get like the crawling on the ceiling, head spinning around things that you get in your fictional movie takes of exorcism and stuff. But if God in heaven is real, then Satan and hell are real, and there are spiritual forces. There's spiritual, you know things. There's angels, there's demons, I mean, it's in the Bible, like, right? We can't believe in one thing in the Bible and not believe in another. So again, that's a whole other topic that we could spend a lot of time discussing. um, but I think the real thing, the focus of this scene, of course, is on what is happening to Mary, but I think what shouldn't be overlooked is what impact this has on Nicodemus, because again, this really like gets his wheels turning, and he's like, later on in the episode, with the conversation he's having with his wife, he's questioning like what his life basically has been up to this point. And you'll see that play out further on in the season. But what did you take from Nicodemus's perspective?
No, I like that because he's at a stance of leadership, and I feel like even he brings up later on, you just said, why do people come to me asking things? Almost like he's questioning his own knowledge on it, and his wife says, like, you speak from a level of, like, you don't ask questions. People ask questions to you. You
Yeah,
answer, because you have the answers.
yeah,
You speak of authority, with authority. And so I think even him seeing that right there, it's just like it's a deep question, because literally what he said was, only what did he say? Only God himself could
hmm
remove that evil spirit from her.
yeah,
And it's like a humbling thing for some, like, teacher of teachers who's typically walks into a room of Pharisees, and they all give him the respect
hmm
and honor, and like ask him questions and
yeah,
pull from his
right.
repository of knowledge. And
Yeah,
so
he's the
he
expert, like, he is the
exactly.
top, right?
And he's the judge, and not the judge, but in
Right.
some
No, no,
regards,
yeah.
like the main, head
Yeah,
honcho of the, at least of Capernaum, where they're at right now, since he's traveled there from, I think, from Jerusalem. I think
mhm,
he's But so the point is that he just you're right, he just questions it now, and he's realizing there's something deeper to this, because there was no, like, there's no humanly ritual that could be done to cure her.
yeah,
There's something deeper, and he's questioning his power now.
yeah,
Like, almost like I feel like in that moment he got closer to God, because he's like, "Okay, so now there's something missing, and I thought I knew,
mhm,
but now I'm going to dig deeper because I want to know more, because there's something that I'm missing." And it's probably, I feel like you get to that, it's really in anything, education, you get to a point in science, or theology or philosophy, you get to this point where you feel like you know more than you can learn, and then something happens to where you realize, like, oh, like, there is more to learn, and you gain this excitement back, and whatever. But I think this is that pivotal point. He's going through
yeah.
a midlife crisis,
Yeah. Yeah, and, yeah, because like you said, I'm sure he's not used to walking
not
into a
knowing.
problem and not being
Uh-huh.
able to fix it, or being the
Yeah.
person that fixes it, right? In the realm of his expertise. But yeah, you're right. In the conversation with his wife, he does say something along the lines of, basically, only God can cure this ailment, right? And then again, when he is teaching or talking to his students or whatever, in a later scene where he's talking about the whole instance that happened, he again says, like, she's a lost cause, like, we can't,
Uh-huh.
us humans, like, this cannot be fixed by a man's hand. That's not like exactly what he said, but basically the gist of what he was getting across there. But twice in the episode, he admits that, like, this needs some divine intervention, because I couldn't fix this problem. I don't think anyone else would be able
Y
to.
and you know what I'm realizing now, I'm connecting the dots here. He also is realizing there's something horribly broken about the system. And that's, like, I think the main point that's driving his questioning, is because he's looking at this, and he's saying, like, to his wife, he's like, "Why do I have to," how does he say it? He's like, "Why do I have to always be on putting on a show for the other Pharisees?" And he's looking at this, and he's like, "I'm never actually in situations that are hard like this." I mean, even you could see it as he's walking into that
Yeah,
terrible
yeah,
area, and that he's so out of place, and he feels it, and he can't even really even remotely relate to anything in that situation. And he's
yeah.
sitting there, and he's like, there is something horribly wrong. Like, I'm supposed to be for the people, but all I find myself surrounded by are people that are, I don't know, what is the modern yes men or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
he's surrounding himself by people that are just always going to um give him respect. I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and like his wife even says, like, you leave the exorcisms to the exorcist or
Yeah.
something like that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's a very interesting thing that is starting to happen with Nicodemus that I think is very important.
Mhm.
Because I think at some point in time, everyone goes through this. Um, and I think that going through something like this is a healthy thing to go through, right? It's never, I don't think it's the wisest thing to think that you always know all the answers, right? Or that you can't learn something new, can't be taught
Mhm.
in any area of life. But most importantly, I think spiritually, um, thinking that you have all the answers, you start to fall into a dangerous area. Um, so I think it's okay to question things, to have those thoughts run through your head because it should cause you to dig
Mhm.
deeper to find the answers. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, that's kind of your whole shtick, right?
No, that is my whole thing. That's no, that is literally everything. No, I think I find in science, what I love about it is that you come up with this, I don't know, we'll just use an example, gravity, right? You have gravity that is understood from what is called the Newtonian perspective, right? Newton's idea of what gravity is, and which is stemmed from Galileo, these very fundamental laws. And then you get deeper and you're like, oh, so then you go into like the Einsteinian, the Einstein's
Just say it with
perspective.
confidence.
Yeah,
I'll believe everything you're saying right
the
now.
Einsteintonian. No, why can't I think of that word? But the reality is like it's deeper, and science is always saying like, okay, here's something I knew. I'm questioning it. I'm figuring out a better perspective of it, or a better law, or deeper understanding of it, and I don't have to hold true to the older thing. And I think that's where I've seen that be conflicting in a more religious aspect, is I see people hold on to these, what are, I guess, fundamental laws. Like, if we would have just stuck to Newton's idea of what gravity is, we wouldn't have satellites out there doing what they're doing right now. And that's why your phone would say a different time than what my phone is, without, general relativity correcting for those things. So
Mhm.
we constantly asking new questions that are revisiting old answers is like what my shtick is. It's what the whole idea of what I'm doing is I want to ask questions
Yeah.
towards, but yeah, so I just think that the whole idea of Nicodemus is just so great, because it's like a higher up person questioning
Mhm.
um everything, and
Yeah.
not like questioning his faith necessarily. It's more of like, did I understand this wrong my whole life?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is so, I think we always need to think in that perspective, because if not,
Yeah.
then how do we ever
Yeah.
know we're wrong?
And I think as the series progresses, Nicodemus has one of my favorite arcs up to this point.
Yep.
So, just for those of you maybe who have not seen this or are watching along with us, keep your eye on Nicodemus. He's got a cool arc.
Mhm.
Um, but yes, so after this whole ordeal, Mary then wakes up somewhere else again. uh, and again, she's very distraught because this is horrible, both probably physically and mentally. Um, and I think in this episode twice, uh, I don't remember if this is the first time happens after this exorcism attempt or before, but she, finds herself going to this bar, talking to this barkeep, um, who they clearly have some sort of friendly relationship, caring
Mhm.
relationship. He knows of her afflictions. He tries to comfort her. He gives her like some weird soup drink concoction that supposedly will make her feel better. But you can tell that he really cares about her well-being, and she has like a respect and honor for this guy because she continues to go to him and accepts his care. Uh, but here at the end of the episode,
Well,
she well, no, go ahead.
hold on. There's something missing between the two. I had to think for a moment. The first time she's at the bar, that's what happens. But in between that, there's a scene. I don't know if that's where you're about to go into.
Oh no, go ahead.
So she actually makes her way all the way to the ledge of a cliff.
Yes.
It took me a moment,
No,
and I had to
this
connect the
this
dots.
is super
And
important. This episode had a lot of dark moments in it.
it did, but
Necessary.
I'll save my thoughts on this for after the final scene. But so she makes it to the ledge, and it alludes to that she is just done. That it's
Mhm.
just like she's given up in some regard. Even in the
Yeah.
first scene, she's given her that doll that you've seen her with.
Yes.
She gave that to the barkeep to say, she's like, "Don't you have multiple kids?"
Mhm.
She's like, "I don't need it anymore. Here you go."
Also, hidden in the doll
Mm,
was, a written, little piece of paper of the scripture that her and her father would say when she would be
mhm.
scared,
A small
and
scroll.
I think before the episode that Nicodemus comes in and tries to solve, she's, like, trying to read it, or maybe it was, like, right after. Anyway, she's reading it and then, like, gets mad and rips it up, and,
Mhm.
in this scene that you're talking about where she goes to the ledge, she chucks the torn up paper over the ledge, and then it's inferred that she's having some serious thoughts and consideration of also chucking herself off the ledge. Um, and she gets distracted by
Mhm.
a bird, which I'm going to assume is a dove.
Yes, that
Um,
would.
I will say they chose like the weirdest angle to show this bird at. Like every time it was on the screen, I was like, "This is so awkward." But yes, continue on with what you were going to say about the scene.
So yeah, no, and so she's standing at the ledge. She sees this dove. Well, and you know how hard it is to get a dove on camera,
Oh,
right? I
right, yeah,
mean,
yeah,
so
yeah,
that's the perspective. They had
yeah.
one shot, and then the dove's gone.
Yeah, and then
No,
they reuse that same shot every time that
the
they
shot
were.
actually took it took them to get 50 doves to get the scene right. They could never get it right. But no, so Mary makes her way, and she's following this dove that's probably multiple actual doves. They lost a couple, but
It's a
it's
really
making.
good, acting dove. They just got, like, one single take of this one dove flying
uh
straight.
so it's guiding her. It's clear that it's, I guess, in the beginning of it, you're not really sure if it's actually like, it's not like divine or anything. It's just a dove, and it's distracted her from this ledge, and she's following it, and it leads her right back to the bar, um, where she was. So she goes on it and does her little secret knock on the bar door, and there she is now sitting at the bar,
Mhm.
and what you can
She's,
continue on.
trying to get, some not nasty, disgusting soup drink. She's trying to get the hard stuff. The barkeep's like, "No, no, no. This isn't for you. This is a way to, like, escape your pains, not cure them." She isn't having any of it. But one important thing is she's approached by a probably rather stinky drunken gentleman,
Mhm.
probably for prostitution, I'm assuming. That's what I think was implied there.
Mhm.
She shoos him off, and angrily he leaves. But as she's about to grab the drink, a hand is placed on hers, like preventing her, and she gets mad because she thinks it's that guy again. She's like, "Hey, I already told you." And the camera pans over, and wouldn't you know, uh, it's not that guy. It's Jesus.
Yeah.
But I mean, they don't say that. But come on, you got to know.
I think it's it. Yeah, you infer it pretty quickly. Well, I don't know. Maybe like the first few seconds, you don't really.
I mean, he looks like a
Yeah, he
Jesus.
looks that good. Um,
But yeah, I mean, he doesn't say. He's just like, I
this is
forget
not.
exactly
I
what he
think
says.
he said this is not for you or
Mm,
something
yeah,
like that, and she's just
she
combative,
storms out.
and she's like, don't tell me what to do,
Yeah, yeah. Don't fuck
very
mess with my
upset.
life. Uh,
Yeah, but she leaves with the drink and
yeah.
is upset and distraught, and she's trying to drink it as she's moving away, and as she exits the bar, here is Jesus following her.
Mhm.
And so and that's another good point that I don't think we've brought up this whole time. What are they actually calling her?
Lilith.
Lilith. Thank you. Lilith. This whole time they're calling her Lilith.
Yes, because I was a stickler on names earlier,
Yes.
and I didn't even follow my own.
We dropped the ball
Yeah,
the whole time.
it's
And
very important though because they don't they
not
not once in
once
this
have
entire
they
episode call her Mary.
yes. And so not once have they called her Mary, and here comes um Jesus following her.
This stranger, this guy, like she doesn't know who this guy is. He's following her out of the bar. Uh, and does she say like does she turn around and be like, "Yo, who are you? Like, what are you doing?" Does
No,
she say anything?
she's continuously saying like stop following me, and there you get that pinnacle moment
Yep.
of like
And you can
that's
take that pin right out of what we told you to pin at the very start of the episode. And what's
and
he say? What's
well
he recite to her?
the first thing he says is Mary Magdalene, and instantly she drops her glass, and the glass shatters on the ground, and it's because it's clearly the name that was her father probably used with her, and that she probably left her family name years ago and gone
Mhm.
by Lilith, and it's something that probably no one in that town really knew that it's Mary Magdalene. So right there, it was like that instant thing, and I think that's where what I love about it is that I don't know if you're a non-believer and you're listening and you're like I whatever, but I think being a person that came to back to my faith, I think at 30 years old, I spent a lot of years not. It's when you get that reintroduction to it, it's something like that. I don't know how to explain it fully without, I'm not going to go into like my whole story right now or anything, but like the it's something very similar to that. Like there's just something there that is just you can't explain, that's not known in that like to anyone else
Yeah.
that's speaking to you, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just it's so deep that like only you can truly understand in that moment that of what
Yeah.
is of who is calling you. So
Yeah.
I loved that moment. They just did it so well. I mean, I think even some of the scenes up until this point, you're like, okay, blah blah blah. There's a fight scene, there's this, and then like you get to this, and it's like it's a tearjerker,
Oh, yeah.
because it's Mary Magdalene, she drops the glass, and instantly he starts reciting, Isaiah 43 again, which what her dad would,
Mhm.
thus says the Lord, your creator, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Israel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, and you are mine. And
And he literally called her by her name that
yes, and that
nobody
is
knew,
like
like you were just saying.
and so she just turns around, and it's like instantly in that moment, it's like instantly in that moment, Jesus called to her and she listened because it's like one of those moments that only God, that's what I love. They alluded it to earlier, is that only God could have cured her from this, or only God could have um done this. And
Yeah.
in that moment, she understands that.
Yeah, and even like to a more like I don't even know where I was like what word I was thinking of using there, but like even more specifically, like only God would know
Mhm.
at this point her actual name, and only God would know how important that specific scripture is and what it means to her. And it's just like she literally just got done destroying that and almost destroying herself. And
Uh-huh.
here it is. At this point, like nobody knows who Jesus is. Like they've, I don't even know how long they've talked about the Messiah coming and returning. So
For
like,
like 400 years.
yeah, but like nobody knows he has arrived yet. And once they find out he has arrived, like he is not what they were expecting. So like she doesn't know this guy from any other stranger. Like so exactly like you're saying to her, like she understands within her being like this can only be God
Mhm.
speaking through this man because nobody knows this about me, right? And just like again, like you were saying, to describe that feeling and how important like it feels, like how like the amount of love that you feel in those moments that you have like that with God, like it truly is undescribable. But man, they do a phenomenal job
Mhm.
of demonstrating like what those moments look like
Yep.
because she doesn't say a word. It's like zero hesitation, straight into Jesus's arms, like weeping.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, if you just listen to thousands of, I guess you would call them testimonials, right? Of people that had these moments. They're all so close to that. I feel, just in, take out all the finer details and you put it to this moment of like you're walking in one direction and you're doing a 180. And actually physically that's what she did. She's walking one direction away from him and she does a 180 into the arms. And
Mhm.
and in that moment, yeah, he didn't say like, "Oh, hey, Mary Magdalene, I am Jesus, I am God." I'm
Yeah.
he didn't say any of that, but there's
Yeah.
something deeper that she and I don't want to imply that like she turned around and said, "This is God." But like this is, like you said it good, is that it's God speaking through this. Like, I don't know what this is, but I fully trust it. And
Yeah.
I'm going to break down my wall right here. And and
It's so great too because if you look at like what he says, like he does literally like call her by name and in that
mhm.
act like literally redeems her
Yeah.
from her affliction. And it's just like when you put all of that together and again, I'm watching this from a believer like I've been saved. Like that's the viewpoint I'm coming at this from. Um, so I don't know if this would have a similar impact on a non-believer, but like, man, just like hearing him like fulfill that what he is saying in the moment he's saying it, and then like seeing Mary have that realization, it's just like, yeah, almost waterworks.
Yeah.
And there's so many moments like that in this show, and I love it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I guess from a perspective of a non-believer, I think it's I was in that state for a long time, and it's really like you can't see something if you're never looking for it. So I think that's one thing, is that as soon as you allow yourself in that moment to actually see that, it's like if she wasn't actually enthralled by that dove, she would have never made it back there. There is a level of, like, you have to open your mind towards something to
Mhm.
actually give yourself a chance to see it. I mean, it's with
Yeah.
anything, you know.
Yeah. And spoiler alert, if anyone doesn't know, dove obviously is used as a symbol of the Holy Spirit. So you
Mhm.
kind of have, I mean, this is like pre Jesus giving us the Holy Spirit, right? But we have that symbolization. That's a terrible word, but like the dove,
Civilization.
the dove leading her to where she needs
Symbol.
to be to have that divine
Uh-huh.
appointment with Jesus, right? So it's cool little thing going on there. But yeah, that wraps up the episode, and a great first episode. We get some introduction to some key characters both in the series and in the New Testament. And yeah, I just, after watching obviously it's the first episode. I came into this initially like kind of rolling my eyes, like Becca asking me to watch this show with her. I'm like, okay, I'm like, sure, if it will make you happy, I'll watch this with you. Um, and I had zero expectation for the show, and this episode hooked me. Um, I thought the presentation, the quality, the cinematography, the acting, like hooked me, right? Because it looks, sounds, feels good to watch. But by the time you get to the end here, like it delivers two on the message, right?
Mhm.
And seeing that interaction with Jesus and Mary. And so for me, this episode kind of captures all the things you kind of want in a Christian piece of media that is palatable. But
Yeah, I think it just really, I think you said it in that, but I think it really stays true to the actual message of the gospel. I think, and that's what the show kind of has done for me so far. Like, it it emphasizes these finer details in a way that allows them to not be the pinnacle of it, you know, and it keeps the message very, um it stays true to the message, you know, like those finer qualities, like what you see with the redemption of Mary Magdalene,
mhm,
the questioning of the Pharisee, and you know, I think it really starts to hit what the New Testament really did to that culture. Already you can start to see it happening. And so
mhm.
um yeah, I mean, episode 1, I feel like there's so many more to unpack. Well, 7 more of this season, and then,
Yeah,
8 more of
about
the next.
yeah, about 15 more to be exact before the
Yeah,
third season comes out.
yeah.
Uh, 16 if you want to count the Christmas special.
Yeah,
But
well,
yeah,
again, we'll be hitting the Christmas special. I think we'll be finishing this up, I think, a week before Christmas, so we'll just have
perfect.
this big Christmas episode,
And it
and we'll
was
drink a bunch of
totally
eggnog and
planned out. I mean, we totally sat down and
uh-huh.
calculated the dates of when we would record and release 100%,
Uh-huh.
to make that
Yeah,
happen.
absolutely.
But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out. If you're this far into the episode, man, that's really awesome. Hope you got something out of it. Hope you're enjoying the show. Let us know in the comments what you thought about this show. Um, and yeah, make sure you subscribe here if you're watching this on the Showboys platform of, network of platforms. If you're listening to this on the Nerdy Bible network of platforms, follow and subscribe and all that fun stuff.
Mm,
Make sure you visit James's website, thenerdybible.com,
yeah.
where you can find some cool blog pieces approaching these spiritual topics from both a spiritual and an academic approach. Basically doing his best Nicodemus impersonation here in these modern times. And you can go over to showboysmedia.com if you want to check that out too. You got anything else you want to say before we jump off here?
No, not really. Just excited about next episode.
Yes, and the next episode, I believe, will be happening after I return from the beach, where again I will probably be sweaty, but hopefully our air conditioner will be fixed.
Yep, but you will not be missing a week, so you'll get your standard weeks. I think.
That's right.
I don't know if we've mentioned it. I think we're gonna be releasing on what, Tuesdays? Every Tuesday it's gonna be released.
Yep. So
I'm on all your, well, most of your major podcasts. Apparently, it takes a lot to get your podcast set up on every single.
yeah, and it's fun, but you'll get there.
So if you click a broken link, just click the next link.
Yeah. Or just listen to it on nerdybible.com.
Yeah, anywhere.
But yeah, thank you guys again, and we'll see you, or you'll hear us next week. Have a good one.
See ya.